Okay, so again, so excited for another Fight Well Wednesday. Just really love connecting with you all, especially during our Wellness Reset Challenge. So, without further ado, I will jump into it. You know, with Wellness Reset, we've got about 4 months to look forward to. And um, what we're trying to do is figure out really the what, the why, and the how of which sorts of superpowers, our wellness superpowers, can uh, boost our wellness resilience, this natural healing capacity that our bodies were built with. So last week we introduced the concept, and this week we're going to talk a little bit more about why our habits are connected to our disease risk. Um, Spoiler alert, that middle link, the connection, is chronic inflammation. So we'll talk about why that is. And Terry just came in, so great to see you, Terry. Hello.
Hello, everyone.
Hello. And and we'll take it from there. So, Terry, we were just getting started on the discussion question. You all know we get started first with the question that was sent out via text on Sunday of this week. You had some really interesting responses to this. I mentioned Glenda's really valuable contributions. Donna and Terry also had some really great responses to this Sunday question and even the Monday prompt. So thank you for that. Thanks for getting discussion going. So I'm going to read it off and you all tell me what you think. What does this mean for you? So the question is, where does wellness fall on your list of priorities? I want you to think about this honestly. So that's one part of the question. The second part of the question is, how do your habits reflect that priority, the statement you just made? Do they, don't they? Anyone wanna volunteer to give their response here?
I will.
Yes. Hi, Donna.
Right. Well, I think the wellness falls high on my priority list.
Uh-huh.
Um, the thing within that I'm working on is just being really consistent. I have some key people in family, and I know some of them, and a very close friend who is really serious about how they eat and this and that. And so that's encouraging. And I'm trying to get to that point where I say, oh, I don't need that. But I'm not there totally yet. But I am kind of a health nut. So I'm not too far off, but I'm not as consistent sometimes, like when I'm out or whatever. But for the most part, I'm pretty good. But I try to make it I think to be serious about it, you have to make it a part of your life for real. So I know if I'm rushing and I don't pack my lunch, and especially because I have a lot of food allergies, and as I said, for the last year, I haven't been pre-diabetic because I've changed how I eat. If you don't keep that in the forefront of your mind and prepare to eat the way you need to, or and it's not just eating, but to have all of that together. It's not
Yeah.
going to happen. You have to make this just as important as anything else, if not more important. So that has to be your base or your foundation.
You really said something there, Donna. I mean, starting with the last part first, you said wellness, the things that you do to support your wellness, your well-being, lower your health risks, they have to be the most important things you do if you say that you value wellness. And you're totally right. I mean, one of the reasons why it's so hard for, just think of the American population broadly, right? Just it's so hard for people to change habits, um, to eat differently, to move more consistently, to manage stress, to figure out how to get quality sleep on a regular basis. One of the reasons it's so hard to do that is what you actually pointed out is the consistency. We can't quite get to the place where we're able to work these habits into our lifestyle if we're not able to break down this thing that we miss a lot of the times, which is the behavior science around how do we shift habits. And so that's something that we're going to be diving into more during these next few months. Not just, again, we're talking about the what of what exactly we need to change, and then the why. So the science behind why this is a thing that will matter for our health and our wellness, but then also the how. Am I going to take these gigantic steps, and am I going to make these huge changes that are so hard to maintain, that exercise routine that impresses all my friends, but that I can only do for 30 days because it's exhausting. And then I take 3 months off after that and I'm just not as active anymore. That is probably less helpful, less beneficial to my well being than if I had done something that's maybe less impressive, than if I had taken some baby steps and worked my way into being able to move every single day. So thank you for adding that, and thank you too for your vulnerability and saying, look, there's some things that I'm still trying to work on, because we all have those. We're still calibrating. Okay. Thank you so much, Donna. Who else? Who else would like to jump in and answer this two-part question? How important is wellness to you? Where do you prioritize it? And how do your habits reflect that?
I'll go next because I'm gonna have to go.
Yes.
Um, it's high. It's high up on my ladder of wellness because I do have some underlying issues that I would like to get under control or keep under control. They're like under control now, but they're not. I want them to go away, and
Hmm.
I have to keep saying in my mind they're gonna go away, and in order to make them go away, I need to constantly think about my habits, my eating habits. Yes, like Donna said, there is some habits that I have that I still have, but when it comes down to food, um, it's like I don't know, I can't have that, or it's not so. I try not to do the I can't have it. It's more so is I don't need it. I
Hmm.
have to say, I don't need that because needing and wanting is two different things. Yes, I want a slice of chocolate cake. I love chocolate cake. I don't need chocolate cake. And then if I do be in a position where there is chocolate cake, I have to say to myself, take 2 bites. Oh,
Mm.
I dropped it on the floor. Man, literally in my head, I would drop that piece of cake on the floor. Because I want you like hair slip. I will, or I will offer it to someone else, or I will ask somebody that I might be with. Let's just you want a piece? Take a piece, please. Take a piece, please. I would, like take a piece.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I would. It's like it's embedded in my head. My it's in my head. But you know what's funny? And I'm gonna go. I look at myself in the mirror and I still see this overweight woman, overweight than what I want to be.
Hmm.
But when people see me, they say, "You stop eating? What are you doing?" And I'm like, and then when I put on my clothes, I could see, oh wow, this is looser than it was a month ago, 2 months ago. But for some reason or another, when I look in the mirror, I don't see what other people see. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, why is that? Even when I take a picture and I'm like, I need to lose weight. I look so fat in that picture. But people keep telling me, you look good. Your face so shrinking. And I'm like, I don't see it. And I'm like, well, whatever I'm doing, I guess keep doing. I go to the gym. I paid my money. Money is important to me. It's not everything, but if I'm gonna spend my money on something, I'm gonna use it. So I paid to
Mm-hmm.
go to the gym, and so the mindset is, you paid your money. You gotta go to this gym, and I enjoy it. I have fun. I've made friends, and like now the back of my legs hurt because she had us doing some exercise. But I don't know if I answered both parts.
You did. You absolutely did. So you said wellness falls really high on your list, and you've got some eating habits and some so moderation around cravings, around um our fun foods that we enjoy but don't necessarily need. And then you said that your exercise habits, your new gym routine also reflects that wellness is really important to you. So I appreciate you sharing that. And I just want to reiterate, I'm in favor of us embracing our beauty at every size, no matter how big, no matter how small, big legs, chicken legs, whatever we got called growing up, whatever people call us now. um let's dig deep, and I know this is so much easier said than done, uh but I love to hear you all um be honest. So I appreciate the vulnerability, Glenda, in saying that, well, maybe I still just kind of don't, uh, I haven't gotten over the some of the feelings I have around being bigger.
Mhm.
And I still see myself as being fat, whatever that means to you. Um, but I also want to say I've been seeing you on video for a while now, and you're beautiful and your spirit is beautiful, no matter what your size. So I just want to
Thank
send
you.
that love to you now, and and
Okay,
just
mother.
seriously. And in that light, I want to again encourage us, as we're working towards our goals, to put our health and safety first. And so, sometimes that means losing weight less quickly. Sometimes that means not necessarily losing weight, but just building muscle. And it's a decision that each of us has to make individually, because no two people are exactly the same. And then if you have, healthcare providers, your primary care doctor, dietitian, anyone else on board the healthcare team, that's someone who you might call on to just double check. If people are commenting too, just make sure that you're not losing weight at more of a rapid pace, and maybe get some vitamin levels checked to make sure that you're still well nourished. That's something that we can all do if we're going to have
Mhm.
a massive change in weight. It goes both ways. If any of us were to gain a significant percentage of our body weight out of nowhere, I'd say head to your doctor and just check everything out. And then similarly, even working on losing weight, it's working well. If it seems like we're dropping pretty quickly, also want to head to your doctor and just make sure everything's um, hormone levels, vitamin levels are where they need to be. Okay. Thank you so much for contributing that, Glenda. You just make my day. You all do. Every time I hear your contributions, every time I read it via text, it just there's so much there. I really appreciate it. Anyone else want to chime in? Where does wellness fall on your priority list? Terry is raising her hand. What do you say, Terry?
Okay, I want to share because
Yeah.
after class one day, Dr. Bridget and Dr. Woos, they spent time explaining my little watch. So here's my watch, my
Yeah.
Fitbit. And so I'm going to tell you what happened today. We had to clean the garage. And so this is what happened. I have done 6,509 steps today. Let me see if I'm going. 2.75 miles is what it equates to. But this is the thing that Dr. Bridget always talks about, the active minutes. It was 252. And
Ooh,
yeah,
252 active minutes?
because they double it when it's cardio, I mean,
Oh my
that calculation.
God.
And so
That's
then I
great.
have 1,881 calorie burn. And then what I have to do is every hour between 9 and 6, I do 250 steps. And I was able to do that. Was it 8 hours? 7 out of the 9 hours today, I was able to do that. But I'm saying all that to say that I went and got blood work because we talked about that, because I want to make sure I'm in my proper ranges and that I'm coming down. And I have long since stopped worrying about work, that the weight has to be lost by this certain date. Okay. And so, but I'm just trying to build the habits. And so I went and got a massage today by a Black woman who's a healer and a massage therapist. And so I'm just well on my way. So I was telling her about the yoga and stuff, and she was telling me how to, maximize, because I'm not real flexible. You know what I mean? I'm not, because I've never done exercising and stretching enough to be real flexible, but I'm working on it. So that's my report.
That's amazing. Congratulations, Terry. Wow, you are doing so much. Okay, so just to sum up, yes, wellness is a big deal for you.
Mhm,
And you've got especially increased activity
mhm,
to show for it. And I know that's something that you've been working on for these months that we've known you, and you have
mhm,
made so much progress. So, just want to highlight a couple things. This came up with Donna and also Glenda's comments. So, we talk about shifting our mindset or using tools, sometimes mental devices, like Glenda said, she'll mentally drop the cake on the floor and then she can't have anymore. This is all these are some of the behavior science techniques that are really useful. So we're going to keep on talking about these in a more formal way starting next week. And so there are these things, that's the how of how we can actually make these behavior changes, how we can change the eating and the exercise and the sleep and the stress management and turn it into a lifestyle that doesn't take as much energy. In the beginning, it takes so much effort to do something new. But once we build the habit and once it's truly part of our lifestyle, it happens a little bit in the background. And Donna said, you know what? It's not magic, right? So if I'm going to eat well, it probably means I have to plan what my meal is going to be and prepare it before I leave the house. So even once we have lifestyles that supercharge our well-being, once we built these habits, it still takes work, but the work is just much less painful. You don't have to think about every step. You don't necessarily have to motivate yourself through every piece of it. That's what we'll do in the very beginning during these few months that we are working to reset our habits and supercharge our wellness resilience. So, just like Terry mentioned, the watch that breaks down what exactly she's doing, how many steps, how many miles that equates to, how long she's been in this fat burning zone where her heart rate is pretty high. That watch is one of the tools that can be really helpful for a lot of folks. And we also know that some of these devices act as accountability partners too. You'll set a goal, and kind of like you said, Terry, from an evening time period from 6 to 9, you've got to complete your 250 steps. So now there is this device expecting you to do a thing and you really want to do it. So in this way, we relieve some of the barriers that keep us from acting. We build up some extra support, even in the form of a device, and just add that to our multiple layers of accountability. That is so good to hear. Okay, so you all are on point. We asked this question this week. Hold on, let me check the chat. Okay, Glenda said, see you guys next week. Live long and healthy. Thank you so much, Glenda. And then she has already left us for her other meeting. I'm so glad we got a chance to spend some time with her today. So, the reason we asked this question this week is that we're picking up where we left off last week, and we're getting into this idea of risks versus resources. And so we talked about that last week, how what we really want to do is just boost our body's natural healing capacity. And that's a set of systems that I call wellness resilience. And, the systems that we're talking about, we said this last week, and we'll get into the details this week, Terry, but we're talking about the immune system, and we're talking about inflammation versus anti-inflammation. And we're talking about another system that interfaces really closely with the immune system. We're talking about free radicals versus antioxidants. Both of these systems are, they have two ends of the spectrum, and we need balance in each of these systems in order to be well. And what ends up happening is that instead of having balance, we end up far too often on the more harmful side of the spectrum. And really, if we were to live on either end of the spectrum, it would be harmful, because it's the balance that our body needs. So there's inflammation and anti-inflammation. Now, if we never had any inflammation, if we got rid of our body's capacity to build inflammation, we would die of infection, or we would have a wound that cannot heal. Probably both of those. Though that's the main purpose of inflammation, and we'll get into that in a second. But if we couldn't mount an inflammatory response, we couldn't boost inflammation in our bodies, we wouldn't do very well if we were all on the anti-inflammatory side of the spectrum. Similarly, if we are always on the inflammatory side, the inflammation side of the spectrum, we won't do very well. And it just so happens that where we are in our society, most of us are more likely to end up on this inflammation side of the spectrum, where we have these chronic or long-term low levels of inflammation. And so having it for a short time works well. Having it all the time does not. It puts us out of balance. And so these systems just can't work to help us heal. Okay. And the reason why we started off talking about the what we think of wellness and whether it's really a priority is that these big 4 habits, big 5 if you include how we use substances like alcohol and cigarettes and even caffeine, these habits play a huge role in maintaining the balance of our systems, making sure we don't have too much inflammation or too little inflammation. And so here we've got just a reminder, our wellness resources are the things that help us to heal, to thrive. And our wellness risks are the things that can harm us. And so we really want, of what we can control, we want those resources to outweigh the risks. Okay. And as we said, the short story, the spoiler answer for how we balance these natural healing systems is to block chronic inflammation, because that's what we're more at risk of in this country, the way that we live, the foods we have access to, the amount of stress that we're under, especially as Black folks, especially as Black women. Turns out that the psychological stress we can experience through marginalization, it actually can increase our risk of developing chronic inflammation. And so if that's one of our risks, then what do we have to do that to balance it out? Anyone want to jump in there?
Can you say that sentence again? You said how we balance natural healing systems, and then you gave a one sentence answer.
Block chronic inflammation.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. And so if we say that chronic inflammation is a major health risk, as we're learning in the scientific community, that these conditions we talk about as if they're different diseases, they actually exist on a spectrum that we call mainly metabolic disease. So high blood pressure, high cholesterol, heart attack, stroke, which is what high blood pressure and high cholesterol can lead to, type 2 diabetes, which can also lead to heart attack and stroke. All of those can lead to kidney failure, so that we eventually need dialysis. They can lead to blindness, so we eventually just can't see. Each of those can also lead to blockages in the arteries of our legs, which might require an amputation. So from having high blood pressure for too long, for having high cholesterol for too long, and type 2 diabetes for too long, we're at increased risk for all sorts of conditions. And all of them have actually at their base chronic inflammation as a major cause, as a major root cause of dysfunction. And I'll talk about that in a second. But does that make sense? I'm going to pause for a moment. Any questions about
Dr. Bridget, say something.
Yeah, Dr. Bridget. Raise the image higher. Okay, thank you. That's what you put in the chat. Okay. So here we go.
Oh, I don't see
Blocking.
it. You got an image on there? I maybe need to get on a different computer. I'll get on a different computer.
Can you
okay.
see my
I don't see
screen?
anything. All I see is you, and I see everybody on the screen, but I'm on a tablet, so I'll go to my other computer because I was in such a rush to get on.
Okay.
Yeah.
Donna, if you're able to get on, can you let us know whether you see the screen? It should be a slide with 4 pictures. I guess Dr. Bridget can see it. Hopefully it's not just the two of us who can see it. Yeah. Okay. All right. Thank you, Donna. So do you have any questions, Donna, about what we just covered? How there's habits and there's disease, and linking the two for most diseases that we talk about, the link between the two is chronic inflammation. And I know we haven't talked about what chronic inflammation is, but I'm just setting this up. Any questions about that?
I don't think I have questions per se. I want to continue to listen.
Okay.
I think what's dangerous, or what and I think I obsess on stuff, but it's like, well, if you do this, this helps your pre-diabetes, but this isn't good for something else. And then if you do this, that's good for that, but it's not good for the other. So I think that's why you have to have a really good healthcare professional to help guide through what's what's really important in the overall um picture of your health.
Yeah.
You have to put it all together. And for a regular layperson, that's a lot to put together.
It is. And honestly, for physicians, it's a lot to put together too. So this is what we're trying to achieve here. And that's why I encourage you, make comments, ask questions, because if I haven't explained it clearly enough, I want to make sure that I get there. If I've made a leap in logic because I have a certain perspective, coming from my medical background, but I don't realize that you don't necessarily think about things that way. I need you all to let me know. So keep on being interactive. And, to your point, one of the reasons it's so important to talk about the root cause of so many of these diseases is just that. Hi, Terry. Back. Can you see the screen? Okay, good. Thank you. So Donna just made this great comment about the fact that, if you were, I think this is where you're going, Donna, if you were to just look up the guidelines for how to manage certain chronic conditions, it might seem like they're contradictory. And it's true. So for type 2 diabetes, you might be told eat a lot of fruits and veggies. They have a ton of potassium in them. If you also happen to have advanced kidney disease, later stage 3, stage 4 and beyond, then hopefully your doctor is also telling you, you gotta watch the amount of potassium that you eat. You don't want to eat too much potassium, but you still need those special plant nutrients, and you still need those the easily digestible sugar that's in plants. So it's going to be important to navigate that. But before we get to the place where we have the end stage diseases, we still have an opportunity to do some management and some prevention. And that's where blocking chronic inflammation comes in, because chronic inflammation, you can think of it as the really basic way to think of it might be as pollution, air pollution. And so if there is a ton of pollution just sort of circulating through your body and dysregulating these other bodily processes, that will cause not just one disease, but lots of diseases. And so we'll get down to what exactly chronic inflammation is, but that's kind of the big picture. So if we're looking for kind of the one thing that we can anchor to in trying to understand, how can I lower my risk of high blood pressure, high cholesterol, type 2 diabetes, heart attack, stroke, lower my risk of kidney disease, lower my risk of dementia, lower my risk of even certain mood disorders like depression and anxiety, which are increased. Symptoms are worsened when we have chronic inflammation. If we're asking ourselves, like, what's the one thing I can depend on that is going to make me feel better overall, and also measurably lower my health risks, maybe change some of those numbers like the A1C, or the blood pressure. That thing that we have to address is chronic inflammation. Okay. Have we established that part before we move on?
Dr. Woos, you said inflammatory balance leads to, what is the word under health?
Oh,
Health and wellness. Okay.
health and wellness.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
So on the top row of pictures, we've got chronic inflammation. And so we've got, say, risks, health risks are leading to chronic inflammation, which leads to chronic disease, suffering, these things we do not want to have to deal with. We don't want our loved ones to deal with this either. Down below, our resources help to push us more into an inflammatory balance. They give us anti-inflammation. And that pushes us towards the state of health and wellness. Okay. So here is, are you all ready? We're going to talk about inflammation. Feel free to ask questions, okay? You guys ready? Okay. Terry is shaking her head. Yes, this is what I've been waiting for. Donna says, yes, I'm ready. All right. So we got to make this interactive. Now, can someone give me an example of inflammation, or just tell me what comes to mind when you hear this? I know you've heard the word before, even before hearing it from me. What do you?
Arthritis.
Terry says arthritis comes to mind. Okay, can you explain that? Like the swelling that you have with arthritis, or
And
that
the
someone
pain.
has?
And the
And
pain.
swelling and pain with inflammation.
Mhm.
Exactly. Donna, were you going to say something?
I was just gonna say, I think inflammation, as I think of it, is normally like I guess same thing, swelling, pain is usually some kind of, swollen that you don't have the same range of movement in that area.
Yeah. Yeah, so you all are right on it. When I think of just what inflammation does in the body, swelling really comes to mind most. So when you have a sprained ankle, when you might have inflamed joints, your knees, hand joints, and right, we use this term inflamed to mean they are swollen, maybe they're painful. That's inflammation at work. So what is inflammation? It's really just a set of signals that your body creates to tell all the organs in your body, we need help. And here's how we're going to help. We're going to do one of two things. We either need to prepare for a wound, we need to start healing a wound, or we need to fight a bacterial infection. Two main purposes for inflammation. The reason why, after all these years, millennia, human beings still mount an inflammatory process. This is the main thing that it's good for. And that's important. If we didn't have inflammation, if we couldn't mount an inflammatory process, we'd sprain our ankle and it just might never heal. We could break bones and they just might never heal, even when they are pinned together. We would have all sorts of bacterial infections. People who are born with congenital problems in their immune system, deficiencies of different immune cells or cell signals that don't allow them to mount an inflammatory response. They have bad bacterial infections starting from the time that they're children, and often without treatment will not live to adulthood. So this is the good side of inflammation. But that type of inflammation, it's acute, which means short-lived, and should really only last about 24 to 48 hours. So the type of inflammation that works the way it's supposed to, that helps us more than it hurts us, this acute inflammation, that's what you experience when your ankle blows up after you've twisted it. The inflammation that we talked about related to arthritis, that's inflammation that's created still because we have damage to the tissues. In the case of wear and tear arthritis, or in the case of rheumatoid arthritis, the inflammation is kind of misguided because it's an autoimmune condition. This is inflammation that actually participates in the disease process, and that lasts for an extended period of time usually. Even without seeing swelling in our joints, swelling in other parts of our body, we can have chronic inflammation in our cells throughout our organ systems. Questions about that? Probably.
So you want it to only last 24 to 48 hours? You're talking about a sprained ankle or whatever it is?
Yeah. So the height of inflammation, the acute inflammation, when our immune system is working the way that it should, that those inflammatory signals, they get started, they rev up, and shortly after that, the body actually starts to make anti-inflammatory signals. So the inflammation revs up to get ready for the healing and to get ready to fight the infection and get it started. And then just lagging behind by a day or so, those anti-inflammatory signals get going. And before you know it, the scale has balanced again. And the body can continue to do its healing, having gotten a head start from inflammation. But what happens so very often is that we don't have the anti-inflammatory signals. We haven't fed ourselves with, say, omega-3s, phytonutrients that we need to actually create the anti-inflammatory signals. We haven't been active enough to create the anti-inflammatory surge to strengthen that side of the seesaw. We haven't slept well enough to give our body time to regenerate the proteins and the cell signals that we need in that anti-inflammatory surge. We've dealt with chronic stress for way too long, and that is boosting the inflammatory side, that's boosting inflammation to a place where we just can't mount enough of an anti-inflammatory response. Okay, yes. Dr. Bridget has raised her hand.
Terry, do you understand what she's saying?
Yeah, now I mean that's deep. I mean, because you know what I mean. Because I'm thinking about when I was 12 years old, I always kept spraining my ankle, and then, like you said, after 24 hours or whatever, then the healing process starts.
Right.
Yeah.
So imagine like, right, your sprained ankle, or you cut your finger, and then you have certain inflammatory products that go to the wound to help it to heal. But in doing that, it has to scavenge, it has to clean up, it has to help it heal. So it gets actually larger and more inflamed because those products that are sent to the wound to heal it can cause a little damage as part of the healing. So they may tell you to ice your ankle, elevate your ankle, maybe take an anti-inflammatory so it doesn't get out of whack. So I think what Dr. Woos is saying, like some of those things that we do to kind of feed and reduce some of that inflammation, even though naturally it will last a short period of time, the anti-inflammatory cells will eventually take over after so many hours. I mean, you push it along by elevating your ankle, you push it along by stabilizing your ankle so you don't twist it anymore and cause more inflammation, right? You try to keep it stable so that eventually the anti-inflammatory phase takes over, and then you have that equality. So that's, is that right, Dr. Wu? So that's more like
Yeah.
your rudimentary, an acute wound, an acute sprain. But then when it comes to inflammation and inflammatory products in our body, it works the same way, even though we technically don't have a wound.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah. And thank you for explaining that. Donna, did
Yeah,
you have a
thank you.
question? I hear you saying something.
I just want to thank both of you for the
Yes.
explanations,
Yes.
because it brings like full circle why everything is so connected, why when you don't get sleep. And I have to, my confession, I don't sleep. I'm always trying to get everything done. I have very bad sleep habits.
Same, Donna. Same. That's
Same
my
here.
challenge too.
But
Yeah.
that was
Same here.
such great explanations about how everything is connected, why your body needs rest, why you have to give it the antioxidants, why you have to do all of those things for everything to work together for you to get better. I mean, that is so important that we hear that, how that interconnection really is. Because on an everyday basis, we're just not going to hear that. You hear, oh yeah, you need good sleep. You hear, oh yeah, antioxidants are really good for you. And you hear a bit here, a bit there, but the explanation you gave was so good on how that really connects to heal your body. Thank you.
You are so welcome,
Yeah,
Donna.
that's excellent. It really was. Because I was spraining my ankles and stuff like that, but I never knew the path
Mm-hmm.
to healing.
Yeah. I mean, look, you all, thank you. Thank you for the positive feedback. It helps. This is, like you said, this is it's kind of complex information. So it helps me to know that you're following along and the way that we're talking about it is useful to you. If you have any constructive criticism, open to that too. If there's something that you think just didn't quite make sense right away, or you just have follow-up questions, definitely give those, because you're right. We want you to understand the why. That's what really drives it. It's easy to say, I should really be sleeping, but because everyone says it's healthy, right? We know we need sleep, but it is so much easier to deprive ourselves of sleep, to constantly prioritize work over sleep, and prioritize other family responsibilities over sleep when we don't know exactly how we might be harming ourselves or setting ourselves up for a downfall. And I see Dr. Bridget raising her hand again.
So, my challenge is poor sleep, Donna. So you and I are on the same wavelength. So Dr. Roos, how does sleep offer us anti-inflammation?
Yeah. So
How does that help with balance?
Right. Okay. So during sleep, there are probably at least two ways that this affects, that sleep affects our inflammatory balance. The first is when we haven't slept well, even after one night, we see this in studies. One night of sleep deprivation, you either stay up all night or you only get 4 hours when you need 8. We see that we're in fight or flight mode. So our beta adrenergic receptors, our endorphin hormones are up. Our cortisol, our stress hormone, is up. And these are things that actually trigger inflammation in our bodies. So starting next week, we're going to talk about how the experience of psychological stress and physical stress in our bodies, physiologic stress, triggers inflammation, because it's meant to tell us, hey, I think something bad is going to happen. Like, I'm going to get hurt, going to have a wound soon, or maybe that wound will be infected. And so I need my inflammatory system to start ramping up to prepare. So it's the psychological stress that increases when we're walking around sleep deprived that can boost inflammation. But then there's this other thing that happens, which is during sleep, we actually need this rest time for our body to build specific proteins. We build more antibodies when we sleep. Antibodies help us fight, in particular, viruses, something that we don't do very well when we have chronic inflammation. And we also need sleep to build these anti-inflammatory cytokines. Cytokines, you'll remember, we talked about myokines, the chemicals, hormones, essentially, that are created by muscle and released by muscle. And some of those are anti-inflammatory, and they do other really amazing things. They're released by muscle when we move. They sound a lot like cytokines. So kine for movement, cyto for cells. And these are protein cell signals that will tell the cells, hey, stop doing as much inflammation. There are the pro-inflammatory cytokines that say, start making the vessels leaky, start letting the fluid leak out of the vessels, start letting the cells leak out of the vessels to attack whatever tissue is damaged in a wound so we can start healing it, or to start fighting whatever microorganisms are there, the bacteria that's there, right? That's what happens when we get the inflammatory signals. But then we also make anti-inflammatory cytokines that send the signal that say, stop all that. Stop making the vessels so leaky. Hi, Suzette. Great to see you. Hello. We are just talking about inflammation and how chronic inflammation can be harmful. And so I was just explaining how sleep is so important. There are at least 2 ways that sleep helps us to right our inflammatory balance by boosting the anti-inflammatory end of our immune system. So when we don't sleep, again, studies show that these cytokines, these anti-inflammatory signals, are just lower. And the theory is that we need that sleep period. It's very precious for building the anti-inflammatory cytokines. So yeah, we can really make ourselves sick by depriving ourselves of sleep. We really can. And so that's why we're talking about these big 4 habits. And as we go through these months, we'll talk specifically about just exactly what this eating, the exercise, the sleep, the stress management, and using these substances responsibly, what that does for either boosting or lowering our risk of chronic inflammation in order to give us a shot at not developing these chronic diseases, or at least managing the chronic diseases when we have them. Okay, so, we always get down to time, and I try to squeeze just one more thought in there, just to wrap up the conversation about chronic inflammation. So kind of told you at the big picture, highest picture, we think of chronic inflammation is like pollution in the body. It just wreaks havoc all over the body, right? And it can create, increase our risk of developing all these different diseases, which we've said, like high blood pressure, high cholesterol, heart attack, stroke, and type 2 diabetes, which we said aren't really mutually exclusive diseases. They exist on this spectrum of metabolic disease. Okay. And chronic inflammation underlies all that metabolic disease. Now, you take it down one level and get more granular, and we say, well, what inflammation really does is it makes the vessels leaky so that the cells and the fluid and all the signals can get to where they need to go to solve our problems, to heal a wound, or to fight bacterial infection, which is what we want. But here's why chronic inflammation is the problem. That thing I just described is acute, where it's short-term and our anti-inflammatory system revs up and squashes the inflammation within 24 to 48 hours, and we're back in balance and it's all good. Healing has started, infection fighting has started, we're back to normal. That's acute inflammation. When that doesn't happen, and the inflammation lasts for days to weeks to years, that's called chronic inflammation. The reason that's a problem is that there is one more level of things that happen in our body thanks to inflammation. So we said, okay, general ideas, pollution. One level down, we're talking about leaky vessels and cells and signals. One more level down, we are saying that once inflammation gets revved up, it actually sends signals that affect our source code. What genes get printed? What genes show up in our body more or less? And this is the essential part for understanding the disease connection. When inflammation, and so this is a picture down here to the right of the nucleus inside the cell. When the signals are given that tell the body we need to ramp up inflammation, those same signals also ramp down the everyday processes that help us to thrive. And look, it makes sense if you think about it. What is more important in the moment than healing from a wound? If I don't heal from a wound, it can kill me. It can disable me, right? I have to put all the energy I have behind that. What is more important than fighting a bacterial infection? If I don't get a head start on fighting this bacterial infection, it will kill me. The body reasonably prioritizes these two tasks when it sets up inflammation. So that means all the other stuff falls by the wayside. All that we need to manage our blood sugar, genes get turned off or turned down. Our blood sugar receptor, our sugar receptors in our muscles are not responding to insulin the way that they should. We can't clear sugar from the blood, right? So our blood sugar increases when we're in an inflammatory state. We can't manage our blood pressure the way that we're supposed to. It actually clamps down. We're still in that fight or flight mode. So blood pressure increases when we're in that inflamed state. We can't think clearly. There are changes in our ability in the way that the brain functions, because really what we're most concerned about is just survival, just what's in front of us. So we can't do these executive function planning as well. So these are some of the changes that can occur. We don't manage cholesterol as well. We don't manage the fat in our body as well. And we're more likely to just store extra fat in the liver, where it will boost inflammation even further, where it will make it harder for us to prevent and manage these conditions we're talking about. Okay, so it's not the biggest deal to have higher blood pressure for a day. It's not the biggest deal to have higher blood sugar for a day, right? Because this acute inflammation is only supposed to last a day, maybe a day and a half. But when the inflammation extends into chronic inflammation, if this lasts weeks, years, you all know the A1C takes the average blood sugar of the last 3 months. All you need is 3 months of chronic inflammation to have your A1C through the roof. And that could get you the diagnosis of prediabetes or type 2 diabetes just out of the blue. That's how powerful chronic inflammation can be. This is how diseases get started. There's also data showing that when the transcription factors, when the printers that are responsible for printing off all the inflammatory genes and just getting that whole process started, when that gets revved up, another one of the genes that it downgrades, in addition to the ones that are responsible for controlling blood sugar and blood pressure and cholesterol, another one of those genes is our anti-cancer gene. One of our main anti-cancer genes called TP53. It's one of the genes that's responsible for identifying which cells seem to be growing like crazy, like unusually quickly. That might be cancerous cells, and it's responsible for identifying them and then pointing immune cells over there to get rid of them. So this is a gene that is one of the major ones responsible for preventing cancers. And it gets turned down in the setting of chronic inflammation. So it's not just the high blood pressure and cholesterol and heart attack and stroke and type 2 diabetes and even dementia that we're talking about. If we can't manage our chronic inflammation, it's also cancer. What do you all think? Did you catch that? And I know, Suzette, you came later. Hopefully you can catch the recording. You all have follow-up questions?
That's just deep. I'm captivated. I'm sitting here looking at the screen like I'm really learning now. It's deep learning. I'm just so appreciating this. And it just explains so much. And I think that the danger when you talk about the stress, I have a danger to me. I don't feel like I'm under stress till I'm not.
Donna.
I feel that like this, just a real quick, I literally walked out of a client's like I just quit Monday. Like I had enough. Everything you told me, it was a new client, everything you told me, nothing did you stick to what you represented to get me in as. And Monday, I literally, the laptop they provided, the peripheral, I left it on the desk and literally walked out. And I can't even begin to tell you the freedom that I felt from just, I didn't realize I was so heightened and stressed until I walked out. And I was like free.
Yep. Wow. Wow. You're right. You're right. We don't always know when we are at risk, when we're stressed, when we're way too tired even. Either until we're not, or it either takes a correction of the problem, or it takes one more big step in the wrong direction and a major illness or new diagnosis or breakdown before we realize. And I'm speaking from experience too. I definitely identify with you, Donna, having a challenge getting rest and having to really, I had to work on being more mindful about what exactly I'm feeling. And am I stressed? Or am I just doing that thing that we tend to do, which is, I'm just going to keep pushing and not think about any of it because what choice do I really have? Is what I tell myself. I don't know about you all, but thank you for sharing. That's such a big step to realize, well, this is what not stressed feels like. And so now you have a goal to work towards. Right. Try to keep yourself as close to that as possible. Well, that's wonderful to hear. I see in the chat, Suzette says, absolutely, we'll be reviewing the recording. I came in just as you were talking about inflammation, being fed by lack of sleep. Suzette also says she doesn't sleep like she should, trying to save the world, but losing myself. Thank you and God for his gentle yet eye-opening revelation. Yes. Yes, I think you came in at the right time, Suzette. And again, just as Donna shared with us, thank you so much, you all, for your vulnerability, because it gives us an opportunity to really talk about the human part of all this. We talk about the science and it's fascinating. And it's really, I think that the why is the engine behind making these changes, making these lifestyles work for us. But then we still have to get to the how, and that is the hard part, trying to fit it into life around everything else that's going on. So we're working through it together. Thank you all for being here. We are over time, and I appreciate each and every one of you, including our co-host, Dr. Bridget.
I'm just wondering if Donna is able to sleep better now after Monday. That's all I wanted to know before we.
After.
I am, but I am. I'm able to sleep better. But the problem is not, it was not just sleep. I had bad sleep, period, without this or whatever. The problem that I had, it wasn't just the sleep. I'm walking around carrying that stress that I didn't know I was carrying. And once I let that go, it was like a weight was lifted that I didn't know was there. Because, my habit is just to, you just do things, you get done, you keep moving, you whatever. As a professional, and I'm an entrepreneur, self-employed, all this stuff, got my own business. You just do what you have to do, and you keep moving, and you work through it.
Yep. Yep.
And
And
I think the bigger thing that just in general, you have to, every time I was talking about what was happening, I was raising my voice, I was talking angry, and that's the kind of stuff. And a friend pointed this out, that raises your blood pressure. You're like heightened. It's not good. That's, and I didn't realize, like, well, I'm just venting, I'm just venting. And then it just got to the point, this is not who I am. I don't put up with this, and I'm out. It was just that type of decision. I'm not thinking about this anymore. Bye.
good for you, Donna. That's a brave move. And it sounds like one that prioritized your well-being.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. It takes, I think, especially in our society, it takes a lot of courage to say, I am getting money from this, right? This is my job. And yet, because of the way it compromises my well-being, I can find another way to do this. I can find this somewhere else. Because we're taught that wherever I think, and Donna, maybe you texted something to this effect, or maybe someone else in the chat texted this week, just that we're taught that money trumps everything.
Mm.
That if you get paid well enough, you can do anything. And you get in the midst of it, and sometimes you're like, this doesn't work for my well-being. I will be hurt in the long run, and the money will not save me.
That wasn't me, but the blessing in this, I am a Christian, and I know where my blessings come from.
Mm-hmm.
And in doing this, the person that offered me the contract would never believe that I would walk away from this type of contract with the money that was on the table. And the thing that they needed to know was, I'm not motivated by that money. I'm motivated by how I got here, what you asked me to do, what you represented, and all of those things. And if that's not going to be the case, then I can walk away from this, because I'm going to get more contracts. Mm-hmm. And I turned down contracts to take this one. But I'm sure they were so shocked that I walked away from that kind of money. And it's like, you don't really know me. And it was just that important. Keep this contract, because it's not that important. And you do have to know who you are. And, I think that what happened was, as it came down, I was totally disrespected in the process. You changed the terms, and that's just not something I have to put up with. And they thought I would most likely stay for the money, but the other things were more important.
You were more important.
Correct.
On that powerful note, Donna, I'll close this out and encourage you all, as you go, take a quick picture of the screen here. We've got a list of your wellness superpowers. This is, by all means, not completely comprehensive. There are other things here, but the superpowers can include actually caring, which you all do, prioritizing wellness. They can include avoiding the carcinogenic effects of smoking cigarettes. It can include managing stress. It can include eating tons of whole fruits and vegetables. It can include getting as much activity as we can, even in the background of our everyday lives, even just being active in our chores. It can include getting enough quality sleep to make sure that we boost these natural healing systems so they can do what they're supposed to do for us. So think about what your wellness superpowers are as we go through the rest of this week and into next week, and just think about if there are any on this list that you don't check off, then those may be things that need optimizing. There is room for growth in all of this for all of us. Again, thank you all so very much. I will see you on the text thread and see you in next week's workshop. Take care, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.